The morning alarm echoed through the metal corridors of Galactic Academy, like it did every day at 0600 hours. Lee Taman rolled out of his narrow bed and rubbed his eyes. Another day on Nexus Prime. Another day of pretending to be just another human student among the thousands of aliens who called this massive space station home. His roommate Crick was already awake, using all four of his mantis-like arms to organize his study materials. The Manthari never seemed to sleep much. Crick looked at Taman with those large compound eyes and clicked his mandibles in what passed for laughter among his people. Late again, soft skin, Crick said in his buzzing voice. Your species really is as weak as they say. Can barely function without 8 hours of unconsciousness. Taman said nothing. He had learned early that responding to Crick's insults only made things worse. Instead, he gathered his books and headed to the communal washing facilities. The academy housed over 50 different species, and the bathrooms had been designed to accommodate everything from water-breathing aquarians to silicon-based Christex. For humans, it meant cold sonic showers and recycled air that always smelled like ozone. In the mirror, Taman looked exactly like what everyone expected from a human student. Average height, dark hair that never seemed to stay neat, clothes that were always slightly wrinkled. Nothing special, nothing threatening, just another young person trying to make it through xenobiology. Classes and advanced mathematics, that was exactly how he wanted it. The cafeteria buzzed with dozens of different languages as species from across the galaxy grabbed their morning nutrition. Taman picked up his standard human meal pack and looked for an empty table. Most students stuck with their own kind, but the academy encouraged mixing between species. In reality, it just meant everyone stared at everyone else with suspicion. He found Park So-young sitting alone near the observation windows that looked out into space. She was hunched over a data pad, her black hair falling across her face as she worked on some engineering problem. Taman had noticed her before. She was one of the few humans who seemed genuinely excited to be at the academy instead of just scared. Mind if I sit here? Taman asked. So-young looked up and smiled. Sure, I could use the company. These quantum mechanics problems are making my brain hurt. Taman sat down and opened his meal pack. The food was nutritionally complete but tasted like cardboard. What are you working on? Ship design theory. We're supposed to create a theoretical faster-than-light drive that uses less exotic matter than current models. She pushed the data pad toward him. Want to see? The design was impressive. Even without advanced engineering knowledge, Taman could see that her approach was elegant and efficient. But there was something else he noticed, something that made his stomach tighten. The power distribution system, he said quietly. You might want to add redundant pathways here and here. He pointed to specific areas on her schematic. If the primary systems failed during combat situations, the backup routes would keep the drive stable long enough to escape. So-young stared at him. Combat situations? This is just a theoretical exercise. Why would you think about combat applications? Taman realized his mistake immediately. Normal students would not think about military applications first. Normal students would not instinctively analyze everything as a potential weapon or target. I just watch a lot of military documentaries, he said quickly. You know how humans are always fighting wars in the history vids. So-young nodded, but Taman could see she was still curious. He changed the subject before she could ask more questions. The rest of the morning passed without incident. Taman attended his xenobiology lecture, where Professor Quillix droned on about the reproductive cycles of gas giant parasites. He struggled through his mathematics class, genuinely having trouble with the advanced equations. His academic performance was carefully mediocre in everything, except physical education and tactical simulations. It was during the afternoon tactical exercise that things went wrong. The academy used holographic simulations to teach students about military history and strategy. Most species found these sessions boring, but they were required for all students regardless of their intended career paths. The theory was that understanding conflict would help future diplomats, scientists, and traders avoid repeating past mistakes. Today's scenario was the Battle of Kepler 7, where a small defensive force had held off a much larger invasion fleet through superior positioning and timing. The students were divided into teams and given control of various ship formations. Taman tried to stay in the background as usual, but his team leader was a nervous Centaurian who kept making obvious tactical errors. When their simulated fleet was about to be completely destroyed, Taemin could not help himself. "Move the heavy cruisers to grid 77 Alpha," he said quietly. "Use the asteroid field for cover and concentrate fire on their command ship." "That will not work," the Centaurian replied. "The enemy has us outnumbered 3-1. "Numbers do not matter if you control the engagement zone," Taemin said. "Look at their formation. They are spread too thin trying to surround us. Hit them hard in one spot and their whole line will collapse." Before the Centaurian could object, Taemin had already input the commands. The holographic display showed their battered fleet suddenly changing course and formation. Within minutes, the enemy command ship was destroyed and their formation fell apart, exactly as Taemin had predicted. The simulation ended with their small force achieving complete victory against overwhelming odds. The classroom fell silent. Every student was staring at Taemin. Even Professor Quillix, a veteran of several real space battles, looked impressed and concerned. "Interesting approach, young human," the professor said. "Where did you learn such tactics?" Taemin felt his face getting hot. "I just got lucky." It was obvious what to do. Obvious? The professor's tentacles writhed in what his species did when they were thinking hard. "That maneuver is from an advanced military academy textbook. The spacing and timing required years of training to execute properly." "Maybe I have good instincts," Taemin said, trying to sound casual, but he could feel everyone still staring at him. In the back of the classroom, he noticed Commander Choi Hun-woo watching him with sharp eyes. The human military instructor had been observing the class, and something in his expression made Taemin very uncomfortable. After class, Taemin hurried toward his dormitory, hoping to avoid any more attention. He almost made it. Lee Taemin. He turned to see Commander Choi approaching. The older man was tall and scarred, with the kind of bearing that came from real combat experience. Most students were afraid of him, but he had always been polite to Taemin before. "Yes, sir? That was impressive work in there. Very advanced thinking for a first-year student." Choi studied Taemin's face carefully. "Tell me, what does your family do back on Earth?" "My father works in shipping," Taemin said. It was the story he had prepared long ago. "Nothing exciting in shipping." Choi nodded slowly. "What kind of shipping?" "Just cargo. Moving things from one place to another." "I see." The commander was quiet for a long moment. "Well, you should be careful, young man. Sometimes natural talent can attract the wrong kind of attention. Not everyone appreciates brilliance in tactical thinking." "I understand, sir." "I hope you do." Choi turned to leave, then stopped. "If you ever need to talk about anything, my door is always open. Sometimes young people carry burdens that are too heavy for them to handle alone." That evening, Taemin sat in his room trying to focus on his homework, but he could not concentrate. So Young had asked him to study together, but he had made an excuse about being tired. Crick was out at some Manthari cultural event, so he was alone with his thoughts. His personal communicator chimed softly. "One message." Taemin looked at the sender and felt his blood turn to ice. The message was short, just a few words, but they changed everything. "Time to come home. The galaxy is asking questions about you." "Dad." Taemin deleted the message immediately and tried to pretend his hands were not shaking. For 3 years, he had managed to be nobody special. Just another human student trying to get an education and maybe make some friends along the way. But deep down, he had always known this day would come. Outside his window, the stars looked the same as always. But Taemin knew that somewhere out there, people were starting to remember. People were starting to wonder. And when they figured out who he really was, his quiet life at the academy would be over forever. He was Lee Taemin, son of the most feared human warlord in galactic history, and his secret was about to be discovered. 20 years ago, the galaxy learned to fear a single human name, General Kim Dong-woo. The war had started when 7 alien species formed the Coalition of Order. They claimed humans were too dangerous to be left alone among the stars. Human colonies were expanding too fast, human technology was advancing too quickly, and human warriors were too effective in battle. The Coalition decided that humanity needed to be controlled before it became a threat to galactic peace. They were wrong about one thing. Humanity was already a threat. The Coalition's first strike hit 12 human colony worlds simultaneously. Millions of civilians died in the opening hours. The alien fleets expected quick surrender from a species that had only been in space for 2 centuries. Instead, they got Kim Dong-woo. The human general appeared from nowhere with a fleet that seemed to multiply every time the coalition fought it. His tactics were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Where other species fought with honor and followed ancient rules of warfare, Kim Dong-woo fought to win. He used every advantage, exploited every weakness, and showed no mercy to enemies who had shown none to human children. The Iron Storm campaign lasted 3 years. When it ended, the coalition of order no longer existed. 4 of the 7 species had surrendered completely. 2 others had lost so many ships and soldiers that they withdrew from galactic politics entirely. The 7th species, the hegemony reptiles, had managed to survive only by retreating to their home systems and never speaking of the war again. Kim Dong-woo had saved humanity, but the cost was enormous. The galaxy now saw humans as the most dangerous military force among the stars. Trade agreements became difficult. Diplomatic meetings were tense. Other species watched human ships with fear and prepared for the next Iron Storm. Then, at the moment of his greatest victory, General Kim Dong-woo vanished. His fleet scattered to different systems. His officers retired or joined civilian jobs. The man himself disappeared so completely that many believed he was dead. But legends never truly die. 15 years later, at the Galactic Academy, Lee Tae-min was trying very hard to forget those legends. The morning after receiving his father's message, Tae-min sat in Professor Quillix's xenobiology class and tried to focus on cellular structures. It was impossible. Every few minutes he found himself looking around the classroom, wondering which of his classmates might already suspect his true identity. Crick noticed his distraction. "You look sick, Softskin, finally realizing you are not smart enough for this place." "Just tired," Tae-min replied. "Humans always make excuses," Crick said with his clicking laugh. "This is why your species will never amount to anything important." Tae-min bit his tongue to keep from responding. If only Crick knew what his species had accomplished during the Iron Storm. But that was exactly the kind of thinking he needed to avoid. After class, So-young caught up with him in the hallway. "Hey, want to grab lunch together? I have some ideas about improving that drive design you helped me with yesterday." Tae-min almost said yes. So-young was the closest thing he had to a real friend at the academy. She was smart, kind, and seemed to genuinely enjoy his company. But getting too close to anyone was dangerous now. "Sorry, I have extra study time scheduled," he lied. So-young looked disappointed but nodded. "Maybe dinner then?" "Maybe." She walked away, and Tae-min immediately felt guilty for hurting her feelings. But it was better this way. If his secret came out, anyone close to him would become a target. The afternoon brought worse news. During his tactical simulation class, Commander Choi made an announcement that made Tae-min's blood freeze. "Students, I want to discuss recent developments in galactic politics. As future leaders in your respective fields, you need to understand current events that might affect interspecies relations." A holographic display appeared, showing star maps and news headlines. 3 days ago, the reptilian hegemony issued a formal complaint to the Galactic Council. They claim that human military activities in the Outer Rim are preparation for another aggressive campaign, similar to the Iron Storm War. Murmurs went around the classroom. Most students had heard stories about the Iron Storm, but it was ancient history to them. Tae-min tried to keep his expression neutral, while his heart pounded. The hegemony is demanding that all human military vessels be restricted to Earth's solar system until a full investigation can be conducted. They also want any remaining Iron Storm veterans to be handed over for questioning about war crimes. A draconian student raised his clawed hand. "Commander, what war crimes? I thought the Iron Storm was a defensive war." "That depends on who you ask," Commander Choi said carefully. "The humans claimed they were defending their colonies from unprovoked attacks. The surviving coalition species claimed the human response was excessive and violated several galactic laws about civilian protection and prisoner treatment." "What do you think, sir?" asked a Centaurian. Commander Choi was quiet for a moment. "I think war is never simple. Both sides usually believe they are right. But I will say this. The Iron Storm was the most effective military campaign in recorded galactic history. Whoever planned those operations understood warfare better than anyone before or since." Tae-min felt everyone's eyes on him suddenly. Had his expression given something away? "Is it true that General Kim Dong-woo killed billions of aliens?" asked a young Aquarian. "The casualty numbers are disputed," Commander Choi said. "But yes, The Iron Storm resulted in massive losses for the coalition forces. Some historians call it genocide. Others call it the inevitable result of attacking a species that fights for survival instead of honor. The class continued, but Taemin barely heard anything else. When it ended, he hurried toward his dormitory, hoping to avoid any more discussions about his father's legacy. He did not make it far. Taemin, wait up. So Young caught up with him near the Academy's central plaza. The area was busy with students from dozens of species, all talking excitedly about something. Have you heard the news? She asked breathlessly. What news? There are hegemony ships approaching the system. A whole battle fleet. The Academy administrators are meeting with the Galactic Council to discuss new security measures. Taemin felt sick. Security measures? Yeah. Apparently they want to interview all the human students. Make sure none of us have connections to Iron Storm veterans. So Young grabbed his arm. It's crazy, right? Like any of us would know anything about a war that happened before we were born. Taemin nodded weakly. Crazy. I mean, my parents are engineers on Mars. Your dad works in shipping. None of our families were even involved in the military back then. She paused, studying his face. You look really pale. Are you okay? Just worried about the interviews, I guess. Don't be. We have nothing to hide. If only that were true. That evening, Taemin sat alone in the Academy's observation deck, staring out at the stars. He could see the distant lights of approaching ships. The hegemony fleet was still days away, but their presence already made the Academy feel different. More tense, more dangerous. His communicator chimed again, another message from his father. Son, I know you want a peaceful life, but sometimes peace is not possible. The galaxy is looking for someone to blame for old wounds, and they will not stop until they find us. You have learned to hide among them, but you are still my blood. When the time comes, remember what I taught you. Remember that survival matters more than what others think of you. Stay safe. Dad. Taemin deleted the message and tried to think clearly. He could run, change his identity completely, and disappear to some distant system where no one would think to look. But that would mean abandoning his education, his dreams, and the few friends he had made, or he could stay and hope his secret remained hidden. But if the hegemony was really conducting interviews, how long before someone put the pieces together? His tactical knowledge, his fighting instincts, even his age would all point to one conclusion. He was still thinking when So Young found him. I thought you might be here, she said, sitting down beside him. You always come here when you're worried about something. I like looking at the stars. Me too. She was quiet for a moment. Taemin, can I ask you something? Sure. Yesterday in tactical class, when you solved that simulation so easily, where did that come from? I mean, really? Taemin considered lying again, but he was tired of lies. I had a good teacher when I was younger. Your father? Yes. The shipping guy taught you advanced military tactics? Taemin looked at her and realized she was too smart to fool forever. So Young, what would you do if you found out someone you trusted had been lying to you about something important? I guess it would depend on why they lied, she said thoughtfully. If they lied to hurt me, I would be angry. If they lied to protect me or to protect themselves from something dangerous, I might understand. Even if the truth was really bad. How bad are we talking about? Before Taemin could answer, alarms began sounding throughout the academy. Emergency lights flashed red, and announcement speakers crackled to life. All students report to designated safe areas immediately. This is not a drill. Unknown vessels have entered the system and are approaching the academy. All students report to safe areas now. Through the observation windows, Taemin could see new lights among the stars. Ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel, more ships than should have been possible. The emergency shelters beneath the academy were packed with frightened students from dozens of species. The air recycling system struggled to handle so many different breathing requirements, creating a thick atmosphere that smelled like fear and confusion. Taemin sat with So Young and about 30 other human students in Section C. Most of them looked terrified. They had come to the academy to study and build better futures, not to hide from warships. What do you think they want? Whispered Jiho, a young human from the agricultural colonies. Maybe they are just conducting inspections, said Hyejin, though her voice shook as she spoke. Through the shelter's communication system, they could hear Academy Overseer Nem Quilos trying to negotiate with the approaching fleet. The insectoid administrator's translated voice sounded strained. Hegemony vessels, this is a neutral educational facility. We request that you state your intentions and maintain safe distances from the station. The reply came in the harsh, hissing language of the reptilian species, followed by translation, Academy Station. We are here on official Galactic Council business. We require immediate surrender of all human personnel with connections to the criminal known as Kim Dong-woo. Compliance is mandatory. So Young looked at Tae-min with wide eyes. They are looking for people connected to General Kim? But he disappeared years ago. How would anyone here know him? Tae-min said nothing. His mind was racing through possibilities, none of them good. If the hegemony was serious about finding Iron Storm connections, their investigation would be thorough. His carefully constructed identity might not survive detailed scrutiny. The shelter's main screen flickered to life, showing Overseer Quillos addressing the student population. The insectoid's compound eyes reflected the emergency lighting as he spoke. Students, I want to assure you that the Academy will protect your rights under galactic education treaties. However, the hegemony has legal authority to conduct interviews regarding war crimes investigations. All human students will be questioned individually over the next several days. Panic spread through the human section of the shelter. Some students began crying. Others demanded to contact their families. Ji-ho actually threw up from stress. This is insane, So Young said angrily. We are just students. None of us were even born during the Iron Storm War. Apparently, that does not matter to them, Tae-min replied quietly. Over the next hour, the situation grew worse. Academy security forces, mostly Draconian and Centaurian species, began segregating human students from the others. They claimed it was for everyone's safety, but it felt like imprisonment. Commander Choi appeared in their section, his face grim. Listen carefully, he told the human students. The hegemony representatives will begin interviews tomorrow morning. Answer their questions honestly and completely. Do not volunteer extra information. Do not speculate about things you do not know. Most importantly, stay calm. His eyes lingered on Tae-min for a moment longer than the others. That night, the humans were kept in a separate dormitory wing under guard. Tae-min lay on his assigned cot and listened to his fellow students whisper fearfully to each other. Some talked about calling their families. Others worried about their academic futures being ruined. None of them understood that their real problems were much bigger than grades or career prospects. At 0300 hours, Tae-min heard something that made his blood freeze. Heavy footsteps in the corridor outside, moving with military precision. Too many footsteps for normal guards. He slipped out of bed and moved quietly to the small window. In the corridor, he could see Draconian soldiers in full combat armor escorting someone in chains. The prisoner was human, middle-aged, and looked like he had been beaten during questioning. Tae-min recognized him. Professor Min Seok from the engineering department. A quiet man who taught advanced propulsion theory and never caused any trouble. As they passed, Tae-min heard one of the Draconians speaking to his companion. This one admitted his father served in the human fleet during the war. Admiral Vorthak wants all family. Connections investigated thoroughly. They were not just looking for direct participants in the Iron Storm. They were investigating anyone with family ties to the human military from that era. Tae-min's carefully planned identity would not survive that level of investigation. The next morning brought worse news. During breakfast, they learned that 3 more human faculty members had been arrested overnight. The hegemony was expanding their search beyond just students. This is getting out of hand, So Young said as they sat together in the guarded cafeteria. They cannot just arrest people for having relatives who served in the military 20 years ago. Apparently they can, Tae-min replied. Well, I am not worried. My parents are civilian engineers. Your dad works in shipping. We will be fine. Tae-min wished he could share her confidence. The interviews began at 1000 hours. Students were called one by one into a secure conference room where hegemony officers questioned them under oath. Most came out looking shaken but relieved. Then they called Park So-young. She was gone for over 2 hours. When she returned, her face was pale and her hands were shaking. What did they ask you? Tae-min asked quietly. Everything. Family history going back 3 generations. Educational records. Personal associations. She looked at him with frightened eyes. Tae-min, they know things about my family that I do not even know. They have access to records I thought were sealed. What kind of records? My grandfather apparently worked for a military supply company during the war. I never knew that. They showed me documents with his signature on weapons shipments. She grabbed his arm. If they know that much about my family, what will they find when they investigate yours? Before Tai Min could answer, the guards called his name. The conference room contained a long metal table surrounded by chairs designed for different species. On one side sat 3 hegemony officers in their distinctive scaled uniforms. Their reptilian faces showed no emotion as Tai Min entered and sat down across from them. "State your full name for the record," commanded the lead officer, Admiral Kex Vorthak according to his rank insignia. Lee Tai Min, age and place of birth. 19. Born on Earth, Seoul Administrative District. Admiral Vorthak's yellow eyes studied Tai Min carefully. Parents' names and occupations. This was the moment Tai Min had been dreading. "My mother died when I was young. My father is Kim Dong-woo. He works in interstellar shipping. Kim Dong-woo." The Admiral repeated the name slowly. "Common name among your species, is it not?" "Yes, sir." "Tell me about your father's shipping business." Tai Min recited the cover story he had memorized years ago. Cargo transport. Commercial freight. Boring civilian work that kept his father traveling between systems. Admiral Vorthak listened without interruption, then leaned forward. "Young human, we have been investigating your classmates' families for days. We have found military connections, supply contractors, even some minor intelligence operatives. But your father is different. Different how? We cannot find any record of his shipping business. No corporate registrations, no cargo manifest, no commercial licenses. For someone who supposedly travels between star systems regularly, Kim Dong-woo has left remarkably few traces." Tai Min's mouth went dry. "Maybe he works for a private company." "We checked private companies. We checked government contractors. We even checked black market operations." The Admiral's voice grew colder. "Your father does not exist in any civilian shipping records, young human. That is impossible. He is just a regular businessman, is he?" Admiral Vorthak activated a holographic display. "Let me show you something interesting." The display showed footage from yesterday's tactical simulation class. Tai Min watched himself directing the simulated fleet battle with precision that impressed even the professor. "Observe how you move those ships," the Admiral commented. "The timing, the positioning, the tactical awareness. These are not skills learned from watching educational programs. I just have good instincts." "Indeed, very specific instincts." The Admiral changed the display to show battle footage from the Iron Storm War. "Compare your simulation to this actual battle. Notice any similarities?" Tai Min felt sweat beading on his forehead. The tactical patterns were nearly identical. He had unconsciously used maneuvers his father had taught him during childhood training sessions. "Coincidence?" he said weakly. "I think not." Admiral Vorthak leaned back in his chair. "Tell me, young human, what does the name Iron Storm mean to you?" "It was a war. Before I was born." "Your father never mentioned it? Why would he? He is a civilian." "How curious." The Admiral smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Because yesterday we received intelligence that General Kim Dong-woo may still be alive. And if he is alive, logic suggests he might have a family." The room was silent for a long moment. Tai Min could hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. "I want to try a different approach," Admiral Vorthak said finally. Computer display tactical scenario 77 Alpha complex battle simulation appeared in the air between them. Multiple fleets, asteroid fields, and space stations created a 3-dimensional puzzle of incredible complexity. This is the exact situation that ended the Battle of Kepler-7 during the Iron Storm War. The coalition fleet had the humans surrounded and outnumbered. Victory should have been impossible. The Admiral gestured at the display. "Show me how the humans won." The Academy's detention center was a small facility meant for minor student disciplinary issues, not for holding prisoners of war. But that was exactly what Tai Min had become in the eyes of the hegemony forces. His cell was barely large enough for a sleeping platform and basic sanitation unit. Through the small window, he could see hegemony ships patrolling around the Academy station. More vessels arrived every hour, turning the peaceful educational facility into an armed camp. Commander Choi came to see him on the second day of his imprisonment. The older human looked tired and angry as he sat across from Tai Min in the visitor area. "They are transferring you to a hegemony prison ship tomorrow," Choi said quietly. Once you leave this station, the Academy cannot protect you anymore. I understand, do you? Choi leaned forward. Son, they are not just going to question you. Admiral Vorthak wants to use you as bait to draw out your father. They will hurt you to make him come. Taemin had already figured that out. Then he should not come. You really think General Kim Dong-woo will abandon his only child? He should. The galaxy is safer when he stays hidden. Commander Choi studied his face for a long moment. You know, I served under your father during the war. Not directly, but I was part of the Third Fleet during the Outer Rim campaigns. This was the first time anyone had directly admitted knowing his father. What was he like? Brilliant. Ruthless when necessary, but also someone who understood the cost of every decision. Choi paused. He saved millions of human lives, but he never forgot the price. That is why he disappeared after the war ended. To avoid more killing. To give his son a chance at a different life. Choi looked sad. I guess that did not work out. Before Taemin could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the detention center. Emergency lights flashed and he could hear running footsteps in the corridors outside. Commander Choi jumped up. What is happening? The answer came over the facility's communication system. All personnel to emergency stations. Unknown vessels are approaching the system. Repeat, unknown vessels approaching at high speed. Through his cell window, Taemin could see the hegemony patrol ships suddenly changing formation. They moved from relaxed patrols to tight defensive positions around the Academy station. How many ships? Commander Choi called to a passing guard. Scanners show at least 50 vessels, sir. Maybe more. They are still dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Commander Choi looked at Taemin with understanding. He came anyway. Dad. Taemin felt his heart racing. Part of him was relieved, but a larger part was terrified. His father's arrival meant the Academy would become a battlefield. Within an hour, the space around Nexus Prime filled with ships bearing markings that made every alien species in the galaxy nervous. Black hulls with silver lightning bolts, the symbol of the Iron Storm Fleet. Admiral Vorthak himself came to Taemin's cell, accompanied by a full squad of armed soldiers. The reptilian officer looked furious. Your father has excellent timing, Vorthak hissed. He arrives just as we were about to take you somewhere more private for questioning. Let me talk to him, Taemin said. Maybe we can avoid a fight. Oh, there will definitely be a fight. The only question is how many people die before your father surrenders. The Admiral activated a communication device. In fact, let us ask him directly. The device projected a holographic image of the Academy's main communication center. Admiral Vorthak stood before the transmission equipment, while his soldiers aimed weapons at Taemin. General Kim Dong-woo, this is Admiral Kex Vorthak of the Reptilian Hegemony. I believe you want something that belongs to me now. The reply came immediately in a voice Taemin had not heard in 3 years. Admiral, this is Kim Dong-woo. You have something that belongs to me, my son. Your war criminal son, you mean. He will be tried for conspiracy and aiding a fugitive. He is a student. He has nothing to do with our old conflict. He has everything to do with it. Vorthak grabbed Taemin and pulled him into view of the communication pickup. Look at him, General. See what your legacy has cost him. On the other end of the transmission, Kim Dong-woo was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Colder. Admiral, you have 30 minutes to release my son and withdraw your fleet from this system. Or what? You will start another war? No. I will finish the one you started 20 years ago. The transmission cut off, leaving the detention center in tense silence. Admiral Vorthak looked at his soldiers. Double the guard rotations. Prepare for combat. And get me a direct line to Hegemony High Command. Tell them we have both targets in the same system. As the soldiers hustled to follow orders, Taemin realized the magnitude of what was happening. His father had not just come to rescue him.
He had brought his entire fleet out of hiding,
revealing himself to every enemy in the galaxy. The peaceful Academy was about to become the center of a war that would determine humanity's future among the stars. 25 minutes later, the Iron Storm fleet attacked. Taemin felt the Academy station shudder as energy weapons struck its outer hull. Through his small window, he could see flashes of light as ships fought and died in the darkness of space. The battle was unlike anything the current generation of aliens had ever experienced. They had heard stories about Iron Storm tactics, but experiencing them firsthand was terrifying. Kim Dong-woo's ships moved like a pack of predators, coordinating their attacks with perfect timing. They appeared where the enemy least expected, struck hard, and disappeared before return fire could find them. But the hegemony had learned from their previous defeat. Their fleet was larger and better prepared than before. They had also called for reinforcements from other species who still harbored grudges against humanity. Commander Choi appeared at Tai Min's cell, holding a security override device. "We are evacuating non-essential personnel to the lower levels. That includes prisoners. You are letting me go? I am following emergency protocols." Choi opened the cell door. "What you do after that is your choice." They hurried through corridors filled with panicking students and faculty. Alien species that had lived peacefully together for years now looked at each other with suspicion. The human students were being escorted by armed guards, officially for their protection but really to prevent them from helping the Iron Storm fleet. So Young broke away from her guard escort when she saw Tai Min. "Thank God you are okay. Is it true that your father is General Kim?" "Yes." "The General Kim? The Iron Storm commander?" "Yes." She stared at him for a moment, processing this revelation. "That explains so much about you. Are you afraid of me now? Should I be?" Before Tai Min could answer, a massive explosion shook the station. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. "Direct hit on the primary reactor," announced the station's computer. "All personnel evacuate to emergency shelters immediately." In the chaos that followed, Tai Min found himself separated from the other evacuees. He could have followed the crowd to the shelters, but something else called to him. The Academy's communication center was on the same level, and if his father was really out there fighting an entire fleet to save him, maybe there was something he could do to help. The communication center was nearly empty when Tai Min arrived. Most of the staff had evacuated, leaving only automated systems to handle emergency broadcasts. He quickly accessed the tactical display that showed ship positions throughout the system. What he saw made his stomach sink. His father's fleet was outnumbered 3-1. More enemy ships were arriving every hour from different systems. The Iron Storm forces were fighting brilliantly, but they were being slowly overwhelmed by sheer numbers. Tai Min activated the communication array and sent a coded message on frequencies he had memorized as a child. "Dad, this is Tai Min. I am safe, but you need to retreat. There are too many of them." The reply came back immediately. "Son, I am not leaving without you. You have to. If you lose your fleet here, humanity loses everything. You are my everything." Tai Min felt tears in his eyes. "Dad, I learned something at this academy. Sometimes the best way to protect someone is to let them face their own battles. This is not your battle." "Yes, it is. It became my battle the moment I chose to hide who I was instead of being proud of it." Another explosion rocked the station. Through the communication center's windows, Tai Min could see burning wreckage from destroyed ships drifting past. "Listen to me," he continued. "I know these people. I have lived among them for 3 years. They are not all our enemies. Some of them are afraid, some are angry, but most of them just want to feel safe. The hegemony will never let humanity feel safe. Then maybe it is time to change the game entirely." Before his father could respond, Admiral Vorthak burst into the communication center with a squad of soldiers. "Step away from the controls." Young human Tai Min turned to face them, but he did not move away from the communication array. "Admiral, how many of your people have died in the last hour?" "Too many." "Thanks to your father's war crimes?" "No. Thanks to a cycle of revenge that started before either of us was born." Tai Min gestured at the tactical display. "Look at this battle. Really look at it. Your fleet has superior numbers, but my father's tactics are superior. You might win, but the cost will be enormous. The cost of justice is always high. This is not justice. This is two sides trying to prove who can kill more." The arena fell silent as Tai Min and Korthvek circled each other. The hegemony champion moved with the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. His massive claws scraped against the metal floor, leaving deep gouges that reminded everyone watching just how dangerous he was. Tai Min moved differently than he had during his years at the academy. Gone was the awkward, uncertain student who tried to blend in with the crowd. In his place stood someone who carried himself like a predator, analyzing his opponent with cold calculation. "I have killed many humans, young one," Korthvek said in his hissing voice. "You will be no different." "Maybe," Tai Min replied quietly. but you have never fought one who had nothing left to lose. The first exchange was brutal and swift. Korthvex lunged forward with speed that should have been impossible for something so large. His claws swept through the air where Taemin's head had been a split second before, but Taemin was no longer there. He had dropped low and rolled to the side, just like his father had taught him years ago. Big opponents were strong and fast, but they were also predictable. The crowd gasped as Taemin came up behind the champion and struck at the back of his knee. The blow would have crippled a human, but Korthvex's scaled armor absorbed most of the impact. Still, it was enough to make the alien warrior stumble. "Interesting," Korthvex said, turning to face his opponent again. "You have some skill after all." The next few minutes were a deadly dance. Korthvex was stronger, faster, and more experienced, but Taemin was learning his patterns. Every attack the champion made, Taemin studied and adapted to. It was like solving a tactical simulation, except the stakes were life and death. In the viewing area, So-Young watched with her hands pressed to her mouth. She had seen Taemin move during their academy training sessions, but this was something entirely different. He fought like someone who had been preparing for this moment his entire life. Commander Choi stood beside her, his face grim. "He is using Iron Storm combat techniques," he said quietly. "His father trained him well. Will it be enough? I do not know." Korthvex has decades of real combat experience. As if to prove his point, the champion's next attack drew blood. His claws raked across Taemin's shoulder, tearing through his academy uniform and leaving deep cuts in his flesh. Taemin staggered but did not fall. Instead, he used the momentum to spin away and create distance between himself and his opponent. Admiral Vorthak watched from his command position with growing interest. The human boy was lasting much longer than expected, but he was also clearly losing. Each exchange left him more battered, while Korthvex seemed barely winded. "Surrender now, young human," the Admiral called out. "You have fought with honor. There is no shame in acknowledging superior strength." Taemin wiped blood from his mouth and looked up at the Admiral. "My father did not surrender when your people outnumbered him 10-1 during the Iron Storm. Why would I surrender now?" "Because your father was a monster. You still have a choice to be something better." "You are right," Taemin said. "I do have a choice." He moved again, but this time his approach was different. Instead of trying to avoid Korthvex's attacks, he moved directly into them. It looked like suicide. The champion's claws swept toward Taemin's chest, but at the last second the young human dropped and rolled between the alien's legs. As he came up behind Korthvex, he grabbed the champion's tail and used it to swing himself up onto the creature's back. Now he was in a position the champion could not easily defend against. Taemin wrapped his arms around Korthvex's thick neck and began applying pressure to specific points his father had taught him about alien anatomy. Korthvex roared and spun wildly, trying to dislodge his opponent. His claws raked backward, opening new wounds on Taemin's legs and arms. But the young human held on, ignoring the pain and continuing to apply pressure. "This is impossible," Admiral Vorthak said. "No human should know those techniques." Commander Choi smiled grimly. General Kim did not just teach his son tactics. He taught him how to kill anything that threatened humanity. The battle continued for several more minutes, but the outcome was becoming clear. Korthvex was slowing down as Taemin's pressure holds affected his circulation and breathing. The champion's movements became less coordinated, his attacks less precise. Finally, with a sound like a falling tree, Korthvex collapsed to the arena floor. He was still breathing but unable to move effectively. Taemin rolled off the champion's back and stood up shakily. His academy uniform was torn and bloody, and he looked like he might collapse at any moment. But he was standing while his opponent was not. The arena was completely silent for several seconds. Then So-Young began clapping, and the sound spread through the viewing areas as students and faculty realized what they had just witnessed. A 19-year-old human student had defeated the galaxy's most feared warrior in single combat admiral. Vorthak activated his communication system. "All hegemony vessels cease hostile operations immediately. Begin withdrawal from this system." "Admiral," came a confused reply from one of his ship commanders. "What are your orders regarding the human fleet?" "Let them go." "All of them?" "Sir, the Council will not be pleased. The Council will understand that some fights are not worth winning." Vorthak looked at Taemin. who was being helped to his feet by So Young and Commander Choi. Sometimes peace is more valuable than victory. But even as the hegemony fleet began to withdraw, new contacts appeared on the Academy's sensors. Ships from a dozen different species were dropping out of faster-than-light travel, all converging on Nexus Prime. Unknown vessels. Identify yourselves, the Academy's traffic control system broadcasted. The first response came from a ship bearing Centaurian markings. This is the Centaurian Defense Force. We received reports of Ironstorm activity in this system. More voices followed. Draconian Battle Group 7 requesting permission to engage human targets. Aquarian Peacekeeping Fleet. Standing by for orders. Crystalline Entity Collective. Prepared to restore galactic order. Taman looked up at the tactical display and felt his heart sink. The hegemony withdrawal had been noticed by other species who still feared humanity. They were coming to finish what Admiral Vorthak had started. His father's voice crackled over the communication system. Son, we have a problem. There are over 200 alien ships approaching this system. We cannot fight them all. How long before they arrive? 20 minutes for the first wave. Maybe an hour before they all get here. Taman looked around the arena at all the faces watching him. Students and teachers from dozens of species who had lived and worked together peacefully until today. They were scared, confused, and caught in the middle of a conflict that had nothing to do with them. But maybe that was the point. Dad, patch me through to all the approaching fleets. I want to address them directly. Son, you are in no condition to negotiate. You can barely stand. Trust me, please. A few minutes later, Taman stood in the Academy's main communication center, supported by So Young and Commander Choi. His wounds had been quickly treated, but he still looked like he had been through a war, which, in a way, he had. Attention all approaching vessels, he said into the communication array. This is Lee Tae-min, son of Kim Dong-woo, speaking from the Galactic Academy at Nexus Prime. The response was immediate and hostile. Dozens of voices demanded his surrender, threatened his father, and promised justice for old crimes. Taman waited for the chaos to die down, then continued. I know you are afraid. For 20 years you have lived with the memory of the Iron Storm War. You have told stories about human brutality and the threat we pose to galactic peace. Some of those stories are true. My father did terrible things during that war. Humans died, but so did millions of aliens. The cost was enormous for everyone. He paused, looking around at the mixed crowd of students and faculty who were listening. But I want you to consider something else. For the past 3 years I have lived here among your children. I have studied beside them, learned from them, and formed friendships that mean more to me than you can imagine. Your sons and daughters are not your enemies. They are brilliant, creative, and kind. They do not deserve to suffer for the mistakes our parents made before they were born. On the tactical display, some of the approaching fleets began to slow down. I am proposing something that has never been tried before in galactic history. Instead of another war, instead of more cycles of revenge and fear, let us try something different. Let the Academy be rebuilt as a true center of cooperation. Not just for education, but for healing. Send your military officers here to train alongside human officers. Let us learn each other's tactics, not to defeat each other, but to understand each other. Commander Choi looked at him with amazement. You are talking about integrated military training. No species has ever agreed to that level of cooperation. Maybe it is time they did, Taman said. Admiral Vorthak, who had been listening from his own ship, activated his communication system. Young human, you ask us to trust the species that nearly destroyed us 20 years ago. No, Admiral. I am asking you to trust the species that your children will have to live alongside for the next 1,000 years. The question is not whether humans and aliens can coexist. The question is whether we can do it peacefully, or if we will keep fighting until one side destroys the other. 6 months later, the rebuilt Galactic Academy looked very different from the peaceful educational facility it had once been. The new Interspecies Cooperative Defense Training Center occupied an entire section of Nexus Prime, with simulation chambers, strategy rooms, and living quarters designed to accommodate military personnel from dozens of different species. Taman stood in his new office, looking out at a sight that would have been impossible to imagine a year ago. In the main training area below, human officers worked alongside hegemony tacticians to plan joint defense scenarios. Centaurian engineers collaborated with human technicians on ship design improvements. Even a few draconian warriors participated in mixed-species combat exercises. It was not perfect. Arguments broke out daily between species who had been enemies for generations. Some training sessions ended in fights that had nothing to do with the official curriculum. Trust was still fragile and cooperation was often forced rather than natural. But it was working. Knock, knock, So Young said from the doorway. She carried a data pad filled with engineering reports and looked tired but happy. The new simulation chamber is finally ready for testing. Which one? The big one. The one designed to handle fleet battles with up to 500 ships per side. Taman smiled. I remember when you thought 50 ships was a complex scenario. That was before I learned that your idea of a simple training exercise involves recreating the entire Iron Storm, war with accurate tactical details. They walked together, through corridors that buzzed with activity. The academy now housed over 3,000 students and military personnel, making it one of the largest multi-species facilities in the galaxy. In the main simulation chamber, Commander Choi was briefing a mixed group of officers on the day's training scenario. His students included humans, Centaurians, Aquarians, and even 2 hegemony commanders who had volunteered for the exchange program. Today we will be studying the Battle of Proxima Station, Choi announced. This engagement demonstrated the importance of supply line protection during extended campaigns. One of the hegemony officers raised a clawed hand. Commander, this battle was won by human forces using tactics that violated several galactic warfare conventions. That is correct. Commander Horth, the human fleet ignored traditional engagement protocols and targeted civilian supply ships supporting the enemy military. Such tactics are dishonorable, a Centaurian officer added. Commander Choi nodded. Many species would agree with you. But the question for today's exercise is this. If your enemy is willing to use dishonorable tactics, how do you respond while maintaining your own principles? It was exactly the kind of difficult question that made the program valuable. There were no easy answers, but the process of discussing different perspectives helped each species understand the others better. After the briefing, Taemin found himself walking with the 2 hegemony officers. 6 months ago, the idea of casual conversation with former enemies would have been unthinkable. Director Lee, Commander Horth said in his precise hissing accent. May I ask you a personal question? Of course. Do you believe your father was right to use such brutal tactics during the Iron Storm War? Taemin had been asked this question dozens of times since the program began. His answer was always the same. I believe my father did what he thought was necessary to protect human lives. Whether he was right or wrong is something each person has to decide for themselves. That is not really an answer, the second hegemony officer, Commander Vess, pointed out. No, it is not, Taemin agreed. But it is the truth. I was not there. I did not face the decisions he had to make. All I can do is try to learn from the past and build something better for the future. They reached the Academy's central plaza, where a memorial had been erected to honor all the lives lost during the Iron Storm War. The names were carved in dozens of different languages and writing systems, representing every species that had participated in the conflict. At the base of the memorial, fresh flowers had been placed by students and faculty. It had become a tradition to leave offerings there, not just for the dead but as a promise that their sacrifices would not be repeated. Your father comes here every week, Commander Horth observed. Kim Dongwoo had indeed remained at the academy as promised. He was technically under house arrest, while war crimes tribunals slowly worked their way through decades of legal complications. But in practice, he served as a senior advisor to the training program and taught advanced strategy courses to select students. His presence was still controversial. Many species demanded his immediate execution for crimes against their people. Others argued that his knowledge was too valuable to waste. The compromise was ongoing legal proceedings that moved slowly enough to keep him useful, while satisfying demands for justice. He carries a heavy burden, Taemin said. Every day he teaches young officers how to win battles, and every day he remembers the cost of the battles he won himself. Do you think he regrets his actions during the war? I think he regrets that the war was necessary, but no, I do not think he regrets defending humanity when no one else would. As they talked, Taemin's communicator chimed with an urgent message. The sender was Ambassador Yoon Ji Hai, Earth's representative to the Galactic Council. Tamian, we have a situation. Can you meet me in Conference Room 7 immediately? Bring your father if possible. Conference Room 7 was one of the Academy's most secure facilities designed for sensitive diplomatic meetings. When Taimin arrived with his father, they found Ambassador Yoon waiting with a holographic display showing star charts and fleet positions. We have a problem, she said without preamble. 3 days ago, a human colony in the Tau Ceti system was attacked by unknown raiders. 2,000 civilians are dead, and the attackers took several hundred prisoners. Kim Dong-woo studied the display.
Ship types?
Tactical patterns? That is the problem. The attackers used mixed fleets with ships from at least 6 different species. Their tactics were professional but did not match any known military organization. Mercenaries, Taemin said. Someone hired them specifically to attack human targets. That is our assessment as well. But here is where it gets complicated. Ambassador Yoon changed the display to show communication intercepts. The raiders broadcast a message claiming they were acting on behalf of the True Galactic Order to prevent another Iron Storm campaign. Someone is trying to restart the war. Kim Dong-woo said grimly. It gets worse. Similar attacks have been reported against Centaurian and Aquarian colonies, always by mixed species fleets, always claiming to prevent some imaginary military buildup. Taemin felt a chill of understanding. They are trying to destroy the cooperation program by making every species think the others are preparing for war. Exactly. And it is working. 3 species have already withdrawn their representatives from the Academy. Others are demanding increased security briefings that would compromise the program's open information sharing. Do we know who is behind it? Ambassador Yoon shook her head. The attacks are too well coordinated to be random, but the perpetrators are covering their tracks carefully. It could be anyone with enough resources to hire mercenary fleets. Kim Dong-woo was quiet for a long moment, studying the tactical data. When he spoke, his voice was cold and calculating. There is a way to find out who is responsible. What way? Taemin asked, though he already suspected he would not like the answer. We give them a target they cannot resist. Me. Dad, no. Think about it, son. Whoever is behind this wants to restart the old conflicts. What better way than to capture or kill the Iron Storm commander himself? Ambassador Yoon looked interested despite herself. You are talking about using yourself as bait. I am talking about ending this before it destroys everything we have built here. It is too dangerous, Taemin protested. If something goes wrong, you die and the program loses its most important human advocate. If we do nothing, the program dies anyway and takes galactic peace with it. They argued for another hour. But Kim Dong-woo's logic was difficult to refute. The unknown enemy was escalating their attacks, and soon the fragile trust between species would shatter completely. Finally, Taemin made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. I have a better idea. Instead of using you as bait, we use me. Absolutely not, his father said immediately. Think about it. I am the director of human-alien relations. My capture would be just as provocative as yours, but I am not carrying the same historical baggage. More species would be willing to cooperate in a rescue mission. Son, you are not trained for this kind of operation. You are right. I am not trained as a soldier. Taemin looked at both of them. But I am trained as something else. I am trained as a bridge between species. Over the next week, they developed a plan that was either brilliant or insane, depending on who was asked. Taemin would travel to the Outer Rim territories on a diplomatic mission, accompanied by a small escort of mixed-species vessels. The mission would be genuine, intended to establish new cooperative training facilities and systems that had been reluctant to join the EU program. But the real purpose was to create an irresistible target for whoever was orchestrating the attacks. When they struck, hidden tracking devices would allow the Academy's forces to follow them back to their base. The plan had dozens of